Have you ever been sitting in a massive lecture hall, or maybe you're stuck in one of those high-stakes corporate meetings, and you realize about 5 minutes in that you are completely, utterly lost?
Oh, absolutely. The speaker is just flying through their slides.
Right, dropping acronyms left and right, talking a
Yeah.
mile a minute, and they have completely sailed right past your actual level of understanding. You're just sitting there thinking, if they had just backed up and met me where I am, I could actually contribute to this.
It is incredibly frustrating.
It really is.
Mm.
Well, the massive promise of generative AI is that it's supposed to fix this exact problem. It's supposed to be this ultimate personalized tutor. But it only works if you actually know how to guide it. Welcome to our latest deep dive.
hmm
We all know AI is supposed to make us faster, but today we're exploring how to actually make it make us smarter.
It's a huge shift in mindset.
Spot on. We're going to figure out how to transition from using AI as just a glorified shortcut machine into treating it as a genuine co-intelligence partner. Because the goal here is to make sure you remain the pilot and not just a passenger. And to help us synthesize all of this, I'm thrilled to have our resident, calm, dot-connecting voice of reason here with me.
Glad to be here. And it really is a vital distinction, pilot versus passenger. To get us there, we are pulling together some really fascinating perspectives today. We're looking at how old learning theories apply to new tech, how massive institutions are building frameworks around this, and what happens when we really put these tools to the test.
Exactly. We've got a great stack of research for this deep dive. So we're going to be talking about a really interesting Swedish blog post by Anders Thoresson, who somehow manages to connect cutting-edge AI to a pedagogical theory from 100 years ago.
Which is brilliant, by the way. So brilliant. We're also going to look at a highly rigorous Oxford University case study where they tried to build educational content alongside AI and documented every agonizing step. And to anchor all of this, we'll be looking through a comprehensive suite of policy documents from Ireland's Higher Education Authority, or the HEA, detailing what they're calling an AI Fluency Framework. It's a lot to synthesize, I know, but there's a very clear thread running through all of it. It's about the merging of timeless foundational human learning with this incredibly volatile new technology.
Let's start with that volatility, actually. And
Yeah.
specifically, a problem I think everyone listening has run into at some point. In Thorsson's post, he points out a very common sweeping prompt that people use when they're trying to learn something new. The prompt is simply, explain this to me so a 10-year-old would understand.
Yes. The
Yeah.
class.
I will fully admit, I use this constantly. I actually tried it last week to try and understand quantum computing, and the AI started telling me a story about magic boxes and apples. It was so simplified that it became practically useless for what I actually needed to know. Thoresson argues this prompt is fundamentally flawed because it bypasses your actual intelligence.
Right, because it forces the AI to assume a baseline that simply isn't yours. Thoresson points out the psychological mechanism behind why this fails by bringing up a Soviet psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. This is from way back in the early 1900s.
A 100-year-old theory for generative AI.
Exactly. Vygotsky formulated a concept called the zone of proximal development. Now, I know it sounds academic, but the concept is actually incredibly intuitive. Imagine a circle that represents everything you can do or understand completely on your own.
Okay, my independent knowledge base.
Yes. And then, outside of that circle is a vast area of things you simply cannot do, even with help. The zone of proximal development is the thin ring sitting right between those two areas. It's the sweet spot. It's the stuff you can't quite grasp alone, but you can achieve with just the right amount of guidance from a mentor,
It's like having
a personal trainer for your brain.
yes, a good human teacher naturally finds that zone. They don't treat you like a 10-year-old if you're a professional. They meet you just beyond your current limit and pull you forward.
Precisely. But a large language model is not a human teacher. It has absolutely no inherent intuition about where your boundaries are. And we have to combine Vygotsky's theory with another concept from Wharton professor Ethan Mollick, which he calls the AI's jagged frontier.
I've heard this term. It's the idea that AI capabilities aren't a smooth, predictable curve, right?
Exactly. The frontier of its intelligence is completely jagged. AI can be surprisingly brilliant at highly complex tasks like synthesizing 50 pages of legal text or writing incredibly nuanced poetry, but then it is astonishingly bad at things a child could do.
Like counting the exact number of syllables in the poem it just wrote, or basic spatial reasoning.
Exactly. So think about what happens when you are trying to learn a new topic. You are actively navigating the gap between your own expanding knowledge and the AI's completely unpredictable, jagged frontier. If you just type, explain it like I'm 10, the AI skips all the necessary step-by-step cognitive stages that actually build retention. It just hands you a magic box and an apple.
Which feels good in the moment because you think you understand it, but you haven't actually learned a thing. There's a brilliant analogy from the Harvard Business Review that Thorson highlights to explain this trap. They argue we have to strive to be pilots using AI to enhance our creativity rather than passengers using AI to avoid the friction of work.
The aviation anecdote.
Yeah, if you want to be a pilot who can make a split-second life-saving decision when the engine stalls, you can't have spent your entire career just pushing the autopilot button. You have to learn to fly by the seat of your pants. That means spending hours wrestling with the manual controls, making mistakes, feeling how the plane shudders when it banks too hard. You have to develop an intuitive physical feel for the environment.
Because if you let the AI do all the heavy lifting right from the start, you automate away your own opportunities to build intuition. You lose the cognitive struggle, and struggle is actually a prerequisite for deep understanding.
So the real question is, how do we force the AI to help us struggle the right way? Thorson actually gives a highly actionable solution. He shares the specific system prompt he uses.
And for anyone who hasn't messed around with the back-end settings of these tools, a system prompt is basically the invisible set of rules or instructions you give the AI before you even start typing your normal questions.
It sets the behavior for the whole conversation. Thorson tells the AI this: meet me where I am, using Vygotsky's theory of the zone of proximal development. Gauge my understanding from what I write. If unclear, ask one question about my current knowledge level, then proceed.
It's a subtle shift, but it changes the entire dynamic. By explicitly instructing the AI to ask you a question first, you are effectively forcing it to locate your specific learning zone before it's allowed to generate an answer.
I love that. You're demanding that it act as a mentor, not just a vending machine for simplified facts.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this further. If we take that concept of individual learning and zoom out to a professional or institutional level, how do we systematically define what it actually means to be good at using AI? Because it's clearly more than just typing a question. This leads us into the research from Ireland's Higher Education Authority, and specifically the AI Fluency Framework developed by Rick DeCan and Joseph Feller.
The HEA documents are incredibly thorough on this. There is a quote from Feller in the research that really frames the stakes of this transition. He states, just as internet competencies did for the last 25 years, AI competencies will define digital literacy for this generation.
They are treating this as a foundational life skill.
They absolutely are. They define AI fluency as the ability to work effectively, efficiently, ethically, and safely with AI. To make that actionable, they break human-AI interaction down into 3 distinct modalities. And what's important is that we don't just pick one. Fluent users constantly jump between these 3 modes depending on the task.
Let's walk through those modalities. What are the 3 different ways we're actually interacting with these tools?
The first modality is automation. This is the one most people are already familiar with. This is where the AI performs a human-defined, highly repetitive task.
So if you dump a transcript of a 1-hour meeting into the AI and ask for a bulleted list of action items, that's automation.
Right. You're using it to draft a standard email or format basic code. It is purely an efficiency play.
Taking the grunt work off your plate. But the second modality goes deeper.
Yes, the second is augmentation. This is collaborative. It's iterative work, where the AI and the human co-define and co-execute a task to enhance human creativity. You aren't just handing off a chore here. You're bouncing ideas around.
Think of co-writing a complex research paper where you provide the core arguments and the AI helps structure the narrative, or sitting down to solve a complex coding architecture problem together.
Precisely. And the third modality is where things start to feel very futuristic.
I was going to say, this one feels like sci-fi.
The third is agency. This is where the human configures the AI to act independently in the future on the user's behalf. You're setting up the parameters, but the AI executes without you in the room.
We're talking about deploying an interactive tutor for a student, setting up autonomous non-player characters in a video game, or building sophisticated customer service chatbots that handle complex logic trees entirely on their own.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at automation, augmentation, and agency, We have to move away from viewing AI merely as an efficiency engine. We have to start viewing it as an authentic thinking partner.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To operate within those modalities and actually be an authentic partner, the HEA framework introduces what they call the 4 Ds of AI fluency. These are the core competencies required to work effectively, efficiently, ethically, and safely. And the first D is delegation. Now, I always thought delegation just meant telling someone or something to do a task, but in this framework, it's much more strategic.
Delegation in the context of AI fluency requires intense awareness. You need goal awareness, task awareness, and platform awareness. It's the creative vision to look at a massive, messy project, deconstruct it into its component parts, and possess the wisdom to know which specific parts require human nuance and which parts can actually be handed over to a machine.
It's like being a project manager, where half your team is digital. You wouldn't ask the AI to decide the emotional tone of a delicate PR statement, but you would delegate the initial data gathering.
Exactly. And once you figure out what to delegate, you move to the second D, which is description. And we need to clarify that description is far more sophisticated than what people typically call prompting.
It's not just a one-liner.
No, the framework breaks description down into 3 layers. First is product description. This is where you clearly articulate the exact characteristics of the final output you want: the format, the tone, the length.
Give me a 500-word essay in the style of Hemingway.
Right, but then you have process description. The sources describe this as dialogic, meaning it's conversational, it's an active back and forth. You don't just give one prompt and accept the first output. You break down complex tasks, you critique the AI's first draft, you ask it to adjust its reasoning, and you guide it step by step.
And the third layer.
Finally, there is performance description. This ties directly into the agency modality we just talked about. This is directive prompting, where you define how an AI should behave independently in the future, anticipating all the ways a human user might interact with it.
Okay, so you've strategically delegated the task. You've intricately described what you need through a back-and-forth conversation. The third D is discernment. This is the critical evaluation phase.
A vital step.
You obviously have to look at the output and check for quality, relevance, and hidden biases. We all know AI can hallucinate facts or lean on biased training data, but what really stood out to me in the framework is this idea of process discernment. You aren't just evaluating the final product, you have to evaluate the actual collaborative dynamic.
That meta-awareness is crucial. You have to step back from the keyboard and ask yourself, is this partnership actually bearing fruit? Am I making progress, or am I spending more time arguing with the AI to fix its formatting than it would have taken me to just write the document myself?
Which brings us to the final, D, diligence.
Diligence is where the framework anchors this entire process in ethics and responsibility.
And this isn't just an abstract philosophical point. It's incredibly practical.
It is entirely practical. Drawing from the video highlight source, Rick DeCan makes a crucial point regarding this. He argues that diligence means taking ultimate, uncompromising ownership of the final product. If the AI hallucinates a fake legal precedent and you put it in a brief, the judge doesn't sanction the AI, they sanction you.
Diligence means implementing rigorous safety checks, thoroughly verifying claims against primary sources, ensuring fairness if the AI is making decisions about people, and being totally transparent with your audience or your colleagues about the fact that AI was involved in the creation process. The buck always stops with the human.
Always.
Delegation, description, discernment, and diligence. It's a really strong mental checklist to run through. But theory is one thing. To see what these 4 Ds look like when they are pushed to their absolute limit, we have to look at the Oxford case study in our sources.
This was a project led by David Lefebvre and Marco Mangiello, and it is essentially a masterclass in what they call co-intelligence.
They didn't just use AI to write an outline. They built an entire 10 to 12-hour interactive online course for international business students, specifically focusing on generative AI for academic study.
The sheer rigor of this Oxford study is what makes it so valuable for us to look at. They didn't just open a chat window and say, build me a syllabus. They spent 180 hours over the course of 3 months building this program. And they did it using a highly structured 11-stage collaborative framework.
180 hours is a massive amount of time for something that's supposed to automate work.
Well, that's the point of the study. The methodology required mandatory human intervention at every single one of those 11 stages. They worked alongside the AI from the initial course specification to the structural design, the drafting of the content, all the way through to the final assessment creation and review.
The specific tactics they use are fascinating, and anyone doing complex work can really steal these. For example, they heavily used role-based AI specialization. Rather than talking to a generic assistant, they would specifically instruct the AI to act strictly as a university professor during the drafting phase.
And then in the next stage, they would instruct the AI to drop that persona and act strictly as a ruthless copy editor. Then, as a specialized subject expert, by compartmentalizing the AI's roles, they got much higher quality outputs.
They also built iterative prompt libraries. When they found a description that worked perfectly, they saved it and reused it, refining their instructions over time.
But the most important tactic they used goes right back to Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development.
The clarification
Yeah.
protocols. They literally mandated in their system prompts that the AI had to ask them clarifying questions before it was allowed to start generating content for a new topic. The AI was not allowed to guess what the professors wanted. It had to interrogate the human experts first.
It's an incredibly disciplined way to work, and the results speak for themselves. By enforcing these mandatory human checkpoints and strict conversational protocols, they completely prevented what they call scope drift.
That's when the AI just wanders off topic and starts generating beautifully written, completely irrelevant nonsense.
Exactly. They maintained absolute pedagogical quality and coherence throughout a massive project while still vastly accelerating the speed of the actual content creation. It proves that structured co-intelligence works, but it requires as much human discipline as it does artificial intelligence.
It really reframes what it means to be productive. So let's take all of this and look at the macro level. We've talked about how you can use the system prompt to learn better individually. We've seen how professionals can build massive projects using the 4Ds. But what does this all mean for the future of our institutions, for our schools, our universities, and our workplaces?
That is the existential question at the heart of the HEA policy framework. Higher education, and really any knowledge-based industry, is currently bouncing between two extremes. On one side, you have uncritical adoption, where people just blindly use AI for everything, leading to a massive drop in quality and a loss of skills.
And on the other side, you have uncritical rejection, where institutions try to ban it entirely, which is effectively trying to hold back the ocean with a broom.
The HEA is pushing institutions to find the middle ground. They are prioritizing academic integrity, ensuring equity so that all students have access to these tools, and focusing on sustainable pedagogy. They want to safeguard the core mission of learning while embracing the reality of the technology.
But embracing that reality creates a massive crisis for how we evaluate people. Referencing the TIFE transcript source we reviewed, they hit on a terrifying realization for educators. We've spent a century using the essay as the ultimate proof of understanding. But when a student can generate a perfectly coherent, highly structured essay on the geopolitical causes of World War I in 3 seconds, what are we actually assessing when we grade it?
It completely destabilizes traditional testing. If the product is flawless but the student didn't struggle to make it, the grade means nothing. The transcript points out that the only way forward is for educators to lean heavily into their distinct human expertise.
Their disciplinary expertise, pedagogical expertise, and assessment expertise.
Exactly. Disciplinary expertise means knowing what core knowledge is truly foundational and must be memorized or internalized without AI. Pedagogical expertise is understanding the emotional, messy, human journey of how a specific student actually learns. And assessment expertise means knowing how to recognize genuine, internalized understanding when they see it, which might not look like a traditional essay anymore.
It means we have to design evaluations that value the process and the growth of the individual, rather than just grading the final polished product. It's almost like in elementary math where you have to show your work. We might have to pivot entirely to assessing how well a student collaborates with the AI.
Assessing their co-intelligence.
Right. Are they demonstrating the 4Ds? Are they showing good delegation? Are they using complex description and discernment? Are they exercising diligence in verifying facts? We have to evaluate their co-intelligence rather than punishing them for using the exact tools that are going to define their professional careers.
It's a shift from assessing what someone knows to assessing how well they can navigate what is known.
Exactly. So let's summarize the journey we've taken through this stack of sources today. We started with Vygotsky's 100-year-old zone of proximal development, recognizing that AI can be the ultimate mentor, but only if we actively guide it past this jagged frontier. We moved through the new digital literacy, the 3 modalities of automation, augmentation, and agency.
We broke down the crucial 4Ds of AI fluency: delegation, description, discernment, and diligence.
And we saw what that looks like in practice with the 180-hour Oxford case study, proving that deep structured collaboration requires intense human oversight. And finally, we confronted the reality that to navigate this shifting landscape, we must focus on evaluating human process and growth. To succeed, to be a pilot, you must master the manual controls.
It requires intention, friction, and practice. You simply can't just be a passenger.
You really can't. And so here's my direct call to action for you. The very next time you open up an AI tool to learn a new concept or work through a complex problem, do not use a basic prompt. Try Anders Thorsson's framework. Tell the AI, meet me where I am. Gauge my understanding from what I write. If unclear, ask one question about my current knowledge level, then proceed. Take the manual controls. Force the machine to be your partner, not your proxy.
That is the perfect starting point. But this raises an important question, and it's thought I want to leave you with today, something that wasn't explicitly answered in any of our sources. Throughout our entire discussion, there has been this absolute emphasis on the necessity of learning to fly by the seat of your pants, wrestling with the manual struggle of learning and creating before you ever turn on the autopilot.
The required friction.
Right. But as we transition rapidly into that third modality, the agency modality, an entire generation is about to grow up completely immersed in AI collaboration from day one. If a future student never has to endure the manual, frustrating struggle of drafting a raw essay from scratch or hunting down a missing semicolon in raw code, what actually happens to human cognition?
That's a profound thought.
Will humanity adapt and develop a completely new, higher-level type of intuition for complex, systemic problem solving? Or if those AI systems ever go down, will we suddenly wake up to find that there are simply no pilots left who remember how to fly the plane?